What is up everyone and welcome back to TotalSport. Now I'm in a slightly different setup today because I'm back home from university, but this is a video that I have to make regarding the passing of Gerard Houllier. Now we did a video regarding the passing of Diego Maradona previously, but I thought today would be probably a good time to commemorate Gerard Houllier, Liverpool manager from between 1998 and 2004. He was an instrumental part of returning Liverpool to success. Now he'd had success previously, of course, in the 70s and 80s especially, but Liverpool Football Club had that core of the boot room that had finally finished when Roy Evans was part of the club, and yeah, it was an amazing part, but the club needed modernising, and Gerard Houllier did that when he arrived in 1998. I wasn't actually like sentient properly when he was Liverpool manager. I was born in 2002, so a year after the treble season, can you believe it? But yeah, I've decided to pass it over to two people who will know the impact of Gerard Houllier, both at Liverpool and his future endeavours with Red Bull.
And here comes the Emperor back at Anfield. A surprise homecoming for Gerard Houllier.
Some very sad news yesterday coming out of Liverpool Football Club, but also the whole football community really across the world. Gerard Houllier, a legend and a real gentleman of the game. Yeah, this news stopped me in my tracks yesterday. One of my sort of earliest, maybe like teenage sort of football heroes, Gerard Houllier, passing away at the relatively young age of 73, although he has had 19 years after his heart attack in that game against Leeds in 2001. So appointed joint boss with Roy Evans. At the time, I thought it was a really exciting project when I was 11 years old. Probably now I'd think it's a bad idea having two managers at the helm. But yeah, it seemed a little bit that it was going to be a good cop, bad cop relationship. Maybe what Liverpool lacked in the 90s was that real steely character to really get those young talents over the line like Ferguson did. I think United's youngsters were on a par with Liverpool's, really, that people don't remember because Liverpool didn't win anything in the 90s. He embraced the Scousers very quickly. Obviously, he was a keen fan on the Kop himself back in, I think, the 60s. But beyond the sort of calm, friendly veneer, don't mess with him. He, as you could see, he could be a disciplinarian when he wants to. Famously fell out with David Ginola when he was French manager. You could see very quickly he was putting his imprint on the club. He was revamping Melwood. He was bringing through young talents like Danny Murphy, David Thompson, Michael Owen. Obviously gave Steven Gerrard his debut. But buying complete diamonds in the rough as well. Sami Hyypiä, probably the biggest bargain the club's ever had, maybe apart from James Milner as a Bosman. Stefan Honcho, Didier Mann. Amazing free signings, really, that I scoffed at probably when he signed Gary McAllister, Marcus Babbel. And then, who could forget the treble? Some of my best days ever as a Liverpool fan. The League Cup game, it was just the one we needed to get over the line, really, to get that confidence to push us on to bigger honours. It was our first since 1995, the League Cup under Roy Evans. The Arsenal game, we really rode our luck, but came through with a great result, 2-1. Michael Owen at his absolute peak, really. And who could forget the Alaves final? Obviously, it's a real sadness to think what we could have been if his health had stayed intact. But the most important thing for Gerard, at that time was himself. And there was that really emotional occasion against Roma where, how he held it together really on the touch, I'll never know. Galvanised the team, they won 2-0. A few of my mates from school went to that game. I wasn't really hanging around at the time, which was a bit of unfortunate for me because I'd have gone. But I did go to the following round against Leverkusen, which was my first ever game. Bit of a drab home leg, Sami Hyypiä goal. I was gutted to see him go in the end. I always am, really, with a manager, unless your name's Roy Hodgson. I thought he could have done with a bit more time, but I'm not going to complain. We all know what happened next. He put us on the road to Istanbul. I think it's only Alonso and Garcia, I think, in that team, who wasn't one of Houlier's players. And I think it was great that he got a great reception off the players in the changing rooms. And it was great to see him pop up in the 30-Year Wait documentary as a talking head. I've really always got a soft spot for Gerard Houllier, and I don't think Liverpool fans will ever forget the contribution he gave to the club.
Gerard Houllier is a pretty important figure in Red Bull's football operations, and considering the timing and the context in which he arrived, his work was pretty vital and was much needed boost at the time. Obviously his efforts there are not as prominent as his work at Liverpool, where he won trophies in between the late 90s and the early 2000s and set them up for future success and set the foundations for the Champions League win in 2005. Nor was it as vital as it was in Lyon, where he won the league title twice. But in 2012, when joining after leaving Aston Villa, he brought in Ralf Rangnick with him, and Ralf Rangnick is obviously considered the biggest figure in Red Bull's football operations. It was indeed Ralf Rangnick who set out this philosophy of playing with younger players and playing in a fast attacking vertical way. But it was Gerard Houllier who brought him in because he was close friends with Dietrich Mateschitz and Ralf Rangnick as well. And when Rangnick joined, Houllier took over the role of being the head of international soccer, which meant overseeing the two European clubs in Leipzig and Salzburg, and also overseeing the MLS club in New York. But considering the context of which he arrived, and at the time Red Bull was struggling with their two clubs in Europe. Salzburg were winning trophies, but they didn't have a long-term philosophy, and they had older players, aging players, and overpaid players. Leipzig, meanwhile, was struggling in the 4th division and were finding it difficult to get out of there. But he came in and he brought in lots of connections, mainly with French and African football, where he was able to bring in the best younger players from those two regions and nurture them in the Red Bull way. Players like Naby Keita, players like Sadio Mane joined at the time and became better players. And it was him that formed those connections, and Rangnick obviously was able to bring the best out of them. Even Houllier, he was involved heavily in the project in New York. Jesse Marsch yesterday released an emotional tribute after his death, speaking about how he was an important figure in his football career. And they were indeed very close friends and very important, and Houllier was a very important figure to Marsch. And it wasn't just limited to Marsch, lots of players as well, including Bradley Phillips, who was expected to leave the New York Red Bulls after a sluggish first season in the USA. He was about to be released, but Houllier stepped in and had some faith in him, and a few years after that, Bradley Phillips was the greatest goal scorer in New York Red Bulls history. So it was that sort of connection he had with people that made him so important. And while, as I said before, his work may not be as prominent as it was with Liverpool and Lyon, it was very important considering the context and the timing he arrived in. And it was a boost that Red Bull needed.